Let's talk to Max in Illinois. Or do you say Illinois? Which one do you say, Max?
Hi, Jimmy. Salam alaikum. So, Illinois.
Nice. Nice. All right. Well, let's hear what you've got for me.
Yes, so essentially, my argument is that. So, first of all, I will not talk about whether it's possible to prove God exists because it's impossible to know, in my opinion, to prove it one way or the other. But I think that Jordan Peterson's arguments on the social utility of religion, I find very strong and compelling. And even if someone doesn't in their heart believe in God, it still doesn't hurt to do all this stuff that religious people do, charity, and believing in like the authority of like the Pope, for example, if someone is Catholic,
Of
because it will benefit society.
I was on board with you at first when you said the charity thing, and then you said, or accepting the authority of the Pope who recently used a queer slur in describing the status of how many queer people are in the clergy, the Pope who still prohibits queer people from actually being happy together, just not necessarily ready to condemn them to hell, but the church that also prevents women from having autonomy and other uterus havers from having autonomy over their body. You say it doesn't hurt, and yet I've just listed for you multiple and could keep listing on the Pope thing. Now, if we're going to say like what things religious people do, presenting that like it's an exclusive category is extremely dishonest, because also non-religious people do charity. So in presenting it as though to do charity one must be or should be religious is absurd. In fact, one of the most powerful charities in the world is Doctors Without Borders, which is a notably secular charity. So if your entire argument is the social utility, the social benefit of pretending to believe in God or behaving as though you believe in God outweighs the social detriment, that sounds like an extremely privileged take from a person from the group for whom religion benefits, and a total ignoring the great many people to whom it does not benefit and in fact causes harm to.
Well, sure, there's a lot of bad things associated with that. With what you described about the queers and stuff, but uh, it's like it's an excess. They mean well, you the Pope actually, and they want to make people's lives better. And yes, there's like some backwards assumptions and thoughts that they have, but and those should be definitely fixed. I'm not like advocating listening to everything that they say, just because the society just needs to see and think for itself. This benefits us. That
Okay, Max,
that
you're
this doctrine
contradicting
exists.
yourself, and I don't know that you recognize it, because you've said it would be useful to recognize the authority of the Pope, but also we should correct things. You cannot do both. The Pope is either the authority he says he is and speaks for God, or is open to correction through being given evidence that he is wrong. And right now, the Pope has no interest in evidence he is wrong. And your description of like, which world is it going to be easier to raise out of bigotry, a religious world or a secular world? I argue a secular world, that right now religion isn't just a problem, it is the problem, that it is core. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't evil atheists. Unfortunately, there's a shit ton of them, and humanity kind of sucks. However, I am more impressed by secular humanists whose reason for being good people are because I want people to be good to me, when their morality is rooted in both reason and empathy. I'm much more impressed by that reason than so and so, whose authority I accept, has offered me a threat and a bribe. Heaven if I do it, hell if I don't. And I won't ever know whether or not he was telling the truth until after I die. I, uh, I am surprised that this is apparently Jordan Peterson's stance, because I can't imagine he would defend such a, well, no, yes I can, but he would put stupid words on it. But it's a very indefensible and silly position from where I'm standing.
Well, look, of course, it's much more admirable that someone would do it out of, their own ideas without any sort of compulsion or using, as you say, this whip and carrot method. But the fact of the matter is that people are not such, most people are not such good people because maybe lack of education, maybe some other things like
Maybe religious
growing up.
upbringing where they were told bad things were good, and because God loves that God actually makes bad things good.
Maybe
Yep,
that, yeah.
maybe
And
that.
if the Pope, for example, said that we should like kill babies, then I think most people would recognize it as wrong, and therefore, there's like something that's very obvious that the moral of the time.
Incorrect, because the Pope has already said it's wrong that we're killing babies in Gaza. And guess how many babies that has saved? Guess how many people changed? Guess how many military stopped murdering? Guess how many? It doesn't stop. And so
Well, the
even,
Jews, they aren't Catholic, to be fair.
yeah, no shit. No shit. This is kind of my point. What's also easier? Convincing a world of secular reasoning to be good people, or where they can have their religion but have secular justification for how to treat people and how not to treat people and how to keep those things separate, which exist. There are literally Catholic secular humanists who, morality wise, their morality is humanism, and they don't let the God thing influence, and then they try to make their Catholicism work after. So what's easier in a world full of religion to go, hey guys, we get it, you have your religion, but here are these ideals with secular reasoning to them that we have to meet for everybody else? Or is it easier to go, hey, everybody, have your religion, but live by the other one? Muslims, start doing what the Pope says. Jews, start doing what the Pope says. Hindus, start doing what the Pope says. Infinitely easier to convince religious people to live a secularly moral life than to live a different religion than their own. I know, because we literally do that. Our governments are often doing that. The whole idea of separation in church and state came from people who belonged to churches and understood that whoever you are, we have to have these ideals. And so whether or not I want an atheist world or not, I don't really give a fuck that much about, but I would like most people to have values which reflect secular humanism, regardless of if they still have a religion otherwise. And it is not easier to do that by telling people pretend a religion like Catholicism is true and that the Pope has authority.
Well, look, I think that people generally are, irrational and bigoted,
Yes.
and that's kind of the default status. If you read Discourses on Livy by Machiavelli, he writes about that and how religion is important to keep people in check and to control them.
And I think he is
Provides
fundamentally wrong. I think that his message is authoritarian and you can use non-authoritarian means. I don't have such a low opinion of humans. Like you're describing people, their nature, but also you're describing what they've become through a cultural nurturing and just going, because so many people have these things in common. Generally, I think you can teach most people secular humanism, and the number of people who are going to be blatantly evil will be less, because it will generally be the people who can't grasp that, as in sociopaths, psychopaths, people with brain injuries, people who are just shitty people to their core, or have responded poorly to trauma and things that I think you will still have an overall reduction, because you'll be limited to that, as opposed to right now, where many billions of people often do things thinking they're doing good, but it's actually bad. It's only good in the name of their religion, but it's bad for humanity, and it reduces people's well-being.
Well, first of all, I would push back on this idea that he wasn't authoritarian. He was very, if you read, carefully the book, and this is just an aside, but he's a very like progressive Republican person. But besides that, people, I disagree that what you described is requires a lot of resources, a lot of time, and
Yep.
investment that just
Yep.
isn't usually being provided because
No
there are
shit.
people
Why do you
who
think this
love
channel exists? There needs to be millions of these channels. Well, maybe not millions, but thousands of these channels. You're literally talking to one of the people who, when he's not sick, works more to that end than the majority of people. That's the point and mission
well,
of this
that is
channel.
commendable.
And we need more people to do that. But I definitely would not go and say, wow, look how far we are from the end goal. Maybe we should just go ahead and let the Pope be in charge. I would say the opposite. In fact, the exponential rate at which things are changing because people have information at their fingertips. It's like when you see people who move out of fundamentalist Islamic countries. They tend to, first generation, move somewhere, and people usually are shitty to them because they aren't necessarily super keen on assimilating, that they make micro communities and stuff, and people tend to meet that with a lot of racism. You see a lot of that problem in the UK. But by literally the second generation, usually assimilates to the point of not even being able to tell they are simply second generation. And by third, certainly. And then by third or fourth generation, these people who leave those fundamentally Islamic countries tend to no longer be Islamic by the third or fourth generation after. So it's in very short order. Converting everybody or deconverting everybody who's alive today is probably not a reasonable goal. But right now, if the goal is to have more people deconverting every year and adopting secular humanism and critical thinking every year, then we are meeting that goal. And it would be a crazy time to sit and go, let the dude in the dress who is completely obsessed with sex, but won't allow other dudes to wear dresses, completely obsessed with sex because of all the sex he's not having, and convinces all of the other leaders under him to also be obsessed with the sex that they're not having. Let these deviant weirdos be the authority over other people when they are anchoring their worldview in something that, as you said, cannot be proven. And yet there are so many things that can be proven, and we don't need that.
Well, you see, I think my response to that is that, everyone can be irrational at different points, and especially when you're like down on your luck, then you start seeing, people want to see, something good, and that gives them this sort of support to look to something that is beyond their control, that can, supposedly help them out, and it's, I think it has a mental benefit too. But
You just defended Santa Claus. Like everything you just
well,
said could be a defense of telling people Santa Claus
it's
exists.
good. It's good. Yes, it could.
And that's, I
But
don't,
it's
look,
much
man,
harder to convince that.
again, I'm not going to go into great detail, but the last couple months of my life have been extremely difficult, health-wise, mental health-wise. They have been fucking rough, some of the roughest of my entire life, and I've always had health issues. At no point during it have I thought I would love relief from this by somebody lying to me, by expecting me to put down my critical thinking faculties and just have somebody who's like just going to bullshit me about how everything's going to be okay when it might not be. Everything, if it doesn't work out, I'm going to go. The idea of you are prescribing for people instead of letting them choose. And if people genuinely want to choose some fantasy, as long as they are, it's kind of like people who are anti-science, but they're willing to use a smartphone. It's this contradictory thing. All I need are the anti-science people to go, I'm not actually anti-science. Clearly, I love science, so I'm going to stop fucking with it. But I'm going to go have my beliefs anyway. There are lots of Christians who believe in science. There are lots of Christians who accept evolution, that sort of shit. Stop having this contrary hypocrisy that actually tries to attack and reduce innovation, tries to attack and reduce development. That is not a better way, period. And so the core of your argument is religion has a social utility, and I think that it has actually held us back for centuries and centuries, that we passed the time that it kept us alive more than it killed us. And now I think it kills us more than it keeps us alive.
Well, I'll give you another example of its social utility. In 1979, during the Iranian Revolution, in the aftermath, Saddam Hussein he invaded Iran for its oil fields, and the country was very young after they overthrew the previous authoritarian United States-backed guy, and it was able to, and it's the first that was bad, but by utilizing this social utility, they were able to mobilize a lot of people to just come and plug the line with human wave attacks and maintain their sovereignty. And in the end, they signed a peace deal, and they protected their land. They didn't give up any of their land, and they protected their sovereignty.
Max, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go out on a limb here and just guess that you are a cisgender heterosexual man.
Yes, how did you know?
Because you think that that is a victory, that afterwards the sovereignty of a state that still fundamentally only benefited one group of people is some grand victory. Do I want people to die? Of course not. And so even right now, I support a ceasefire in Gaza, despite the fact that I know that the government of Gaza, once the war is over, will also likely fucking suck. And at that time, that'll be the time to protest that government and to try and use whatever tools we have to push them toward a more humanist world. You can think two things at once, and the idea that Saddam Hussein's Iraq is some great we were able to utilize this community of radical Abrahamic doctrine, or call it whatever you want. It doesn't have to be Abrahamic. Look, we shouldn't have gone into Iraq. We weren't justified in going to Iraq. We definitely fucked that whole thing up. Iraq was not a good place. Islamic states are not good places.
Sorry, I just want to correct you. It wasn't Iraq. It was Iran. They utilized that social utility.
Okay, Iran also sucks. For the record, Iran is not a good place either. Islamic states are bad places. Religious states are bad places.
Okay, but you use this example of Gaza, which is very easy to use. What would you say about the Ukrainians? Should they just sign a peace deal because people are dying and stop all the dying and give up their lands? Recently Putin, proposed...
because violations of autonomy is what is worth dying for. That's the kind of shit that you actually fight for, and that's a massive violation of autonomy. It is not the same situation. They aren't unified
to the Iraq-Iran war.
They aren't unified behind religion. But again, what I already said with Gaza and Israel, I think the Gazan sovereignty should be respected, and let's go with restored, because it's not, we're far from even respected, despite the fact that I know that state sucks, that religious-based government fucking sucks. It's a humanitarian nightmare. But it doesn't mean that Israel is justified in taking it over every place at the end of a gun. That is, on that basis, can Israel now just go ahead and take Iran? Can it go ahead and take Iraq? Can it take Pakistan? Can it take Afghanistan? Can it just take everywhere? Ukraine and Russia.
Well, that's not even my argument. I don't know where this is coming from. I was saying that, it's a different type of war from what's happening now in Eastern Europe, and what's happening in Ukraine now. You could compare it to Iran-Iraq war pretty easily, because one side attacked the other, and one is defending their land and sovereignty. And as I said, Iran, they used the social utility of Islam to form human wave attacks to protect their lands. So
I don't know why you're repeating yourself, because I guess maybe I'll repeat myself differently. You're pointing to a social utility that they used to inspire them because the respect of sovereignty was the right thing. So you're basically saying they use something that is dog shit to be able to defend their sovereignty. But it's still dog shit.
More effective.
A bag of dog shit is still dog shit.
It was more effective than, for example, just grabbing people, throwing them to front lines against their will. Yeah, it's dog shit, but people went there somewhat willingly, believing they'll get, their 72 virgins in heaven. So I think it's
I don't know what you think.
clearly there's
I don't
utility,
understand what you think you're defending here, because I'm literally talking about
social
over
utility.
in that region, pre-internet. Yes, it's going to be harder to unify people under any other thing. Over there right now, it's going to be harder because they have ridiculous religious ideals. Right now, that should be competed or protested against. We should be trying to tear down those religious ideals, because the people it's working for, which was the first point I made, was cisgender heterosexual males. So you're sitting and going like, look at how by just oppressing women and queers and having an elite class of people, and by just letting them fuel this terrible thing that, by the way, you can then trace forward to more terrible things that would happen in the future. By letting all of that happen, they had this one victory where their sovereignty was maintained, and that's important. We live in a post-internet world. Information is at everybody's fingertips. Critical thinking can be advocated for, and we should be working toward the world where women and queers get a say equally as anybody else, not go, okay, well, because of the utility, the Ayatollah is now in charge.
Well, look, of course, there's some excesses that, were maintained back in like 2,000 years. Yeah, 2,000 years ago, it was different circumstances, which is why. But I don't want to get into, this discussion about like how Islam is backwards or something, because that's not essentially my argument. And my argument essentially is that, how are you gonna tell a secular humanist like yourself, like, oh, just go there to the front lines, where you will probably, like, in 75% chance be either like wounded or killed by shrapnel without even, seeing the enemy.
Do you know what a false dilemma fallacy is?
Can you explain it to me? No, I don't know.
Yeah, it's basically where you go, if we don't do this, then it's gonna be this. And some people might call it a false dichotomy. There are more options than that. And the fact of the matter is every utility that religion has ever presented that is good does not actually require religion. You are fundamentally talking about community organizing, like at its core. That's what you're talking about. Upon a religious basis, your original thesis was that people should continue to believe in God, and even if they don't, just subject themselves to the religious authorities, because it will be overall beneficial, because you won't get sent to a front line on a sovereignty challenge. That part gets a little bit murky, and that the risk of that is more worth it. That false dilemma is more worth it than all of the benefits to everybody who isn't a cisgender, heterosexual, non-religious, I'll add in there, male, or rather religious male, not non-religious, religious male, that is still better. And Max, it's why I was so easily, it's like the libertarian position of fuck you, I got mine, I don't care about anybody else. It's like talking to somebody like that, where it's like, in a world where I was forced to be Muslim, I'd still pretty much come out on top. With such disregard for everybody, it absolutely fucks over, and let's not forget, kills. And I don't think that's Islam only, for the record, just that happens to be the recent topic.
Okay, well, who fights, do you think, overwhelmingly in the wars? It's not women, it's not queers, it's not transgender people, it's guys like me.
So they deserve all the rights and all the benefits? Let's just even say that that's true. First of all,
I didn't say that.
Large of that, well, why would you bring it up then? If you're rebutting what I just said, I just declared, and I am talking about how you are trying to benefit one group over everybody else. And by the way, that has largely to do with the fact that most people are religious. So for you to just say like, who does it the most? Yes, most countries also have restrictions on what women even can do in the military, but there are plenty of women in the military. There's certainly plenty of queers in the military, and there's plenty of atheists in the military. What were you rebutting by offering that?
Well, let me clarify. I'm not like saying that this is like like a good thing that there's all these restrictions and like these stonings of in that's happening. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying I said explicitly that those are excesses that in modern times as morals change. I think we can all agree morality is relative, and as morals change, the religions should follow suit. But
Great. How are you going to do that?
people,
How are you going to tell the Muslim population that they should both submit to their religious authorities and stop killing queer people? What will be more effective than that than just spreading secular ideals of separation of church and state? You can still believe queers are evil, don't kill them. Your private belief is your private belief, but as a matter of policy, everybody gets to live their own life in their best truth. What's
well,
your
yeah.
alternative?
So those people, they're kind of lost in a way. In a way, you could say they're kind of hopeless because of the
There are
very rigid.
millions of people. I don't think they are. I don't think it is hopeless. So now it's
Well,
not a
I mean,
matter of
in
you
the
think that the
sense
world
of
will be
reforming.
better. You think that specific societies will be better.
What I mean is that there's a very like rigid sort of rules that is written out in their holy book. So and it's kind of like immutable in a way. Although you can say that also from like their I don't know what the term is. They have like these people who interpret the Quran, and I think the onus is on them, and they have like somewhat a social responsibility to make sure that this message is interpreted and fits with the times. So
Okay, you're literally
this moment,
talking about radicals who genuinely believe you should murder queer people.
well, okay, like I was talking about the people who, like the mullahs and the people who would interpret like whether it's okay to wear a burqa to a beach that covers you up. It would not be like a Muslim thing to do, and they're the ones who the onus on to make sure it's like updated. I think in modern times.
Again, you've just repeated yourself and not explained how you're going to convince them that that is the case. Because right now they would say, if we do that, we would all deserve death. That would be a huge sin. That is not God's will. The people who are going to pretend to believe in God in your model would have to be people like me, not the leadership who literally thinks they are God's chosen people. And so it's the weirdest thing, because you seem to think for your model to work, it would have to be the case that it is easier to convince religious people, religious leadership, to not believe in God, but to keep pretending to believe in God and shift to more secular humanism style ideals than to advocate just for secular humanism among people, even though literally that's the history of the world. Literally,
Yes,
the world is
exactly.
constantly
That's exactly
catching
my
up to
point.
humanism.
Exactly my point. The people at the top, they should be secular humanists, as you say. But
And
it's way
pretend.
easier. Yes, exactly.
Good
But it's
luck,
easier
Max.
to.
You are trying to start literal conspiracies, and conspiracies fail. 3 people can't keep a secret. 2 people can't keep a secret. I just think it's wild to have a person call in who's like, by the way, I believe in God, but I can't prove it, and yet I believe it. So first of all, we already don't have the same values because you don't bother to wait until something is worth believing to believe it. But moving beyond that, you're going to call in and basically say we should create a secret shadow world government where we acknowledge all of these people are dum-dums, and we should control those dum-dums, presuming that we're going to be a part of that and that it won't have an elite. It's literally like you're just advocating for us to shift the powers that already exist in capitalism, because in a way this already exists.
Yes, I think it's a good idea
It's a
because,
ridiculous idea. It's a dumb,
well, look,
ridiculous idea.
have you traveled around the world? Have you been in like very rural? Have you been to like West Virginia? Have you been to Central Asia? Talk to people there, or like India? Northern
This would
India.
in no
You
way,
or like
there is, whether I have traveled anywhere has no impact on, again, the data that we can see for how the world is developing and how much more rapidly it is changing now in a post-internet age.
Well, I did, and I have extensive
Right.
travel
And your
history.
multiple anecdotes don't turn into data. So data's still better than your anecdotes, buddy.
Well, if you're just unwilling to listen to my points,
Okay,
what
you're
I was
right.
going to say.
I'm unwilling to listen. It's been 30. I've had you on for 30 minutes, but I'm unwilling to listen. So Max, I'm going to move on. You
Okay.
have a delightful day. We'll talk again another time.
Okay, I hope you think about it. About my point.
I won't. I will forget this before the night is over. Goodbye, Max.
Okay. Well,
What a silly, not just silly, a misanthropic, cynical, shitty thing to present of we should just pretend and control the people when it's like the people who think that they're going to wake up in a zombie movie and they're going to be one of the people who survive. Bitch, you're going to be one of the zombies. For sure. You're a zombie. When the apocalypse happens, you're a zombie. The person right now watching me like, I actually think there's a pretty good chance. Nope, you're a zombie. Every one of you is a zombie. I'm looking at you. I know you're trying to go, well, but what if nope, it's you too. You're a zombie. You're a zombie. Except that you'll be a zombie. It's the where it's like, if that is the world that's created and you know you don't want to be lied to and controlled, but you want to advocate for the world that would have lied to you and controlled you. I appreciate autonomy. I appreciate choice in as much as we can have any. And I don't feel that we need to lie to most people. I think that the average intelligence of a person is capable of having a happy life with the truth told. But listen, if there's one important thing I can emphasize here, can I zoom in? If there's one important thing I can emphasize here, you're a zombie. Hello, I'm Jimmy Snow, Pokemon Master and Executive Producer on The Line. Would you like to support a specific show on The Line or The Line in general? There are special tiers on our Patreon and in our channel memberships. You can do just that. By the way, you could consider leaving a super thanks down below. You could also like, subscribe, and leave a regular comment. All of these are great. Now, I'm going to get back to crushing loneliness, but while I do that, why don't you check out one of these?